2023 was definitely an interesting year for movies. We saw one of the most successful marketing campaigns ever executed with Barbenheimer, the end of a cinematic universe for DC, and the comedy genre continued to sink to new lows. Who can get to it all? Not me, man. I got a few jobs outside this hobby. Since this was my first full year doing reviews, I want to close it out right and revisit the 13 movies that I watched, intended to review, but for some reason or another, never got around to. Until now, in this two-part movie review medley of the ones that got left behind in 2023. In late December, the DCEU finally floundered out with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, my favorite DC movie of the year. Now, that's not really saying shit, but I liked it, even though it's really not all that good. Oddly enough, this is one of those weird sequels that could completely stand on its own, like Aliens. Unfortunately, unlike Aliens, it's not a movie I ever see myself revisiting, and now that the Snyderverse is officially dead, there's really no reason to.
It's over. Go home.
Having been chopped to hell in editing and sent out to theaters at a lean 2 hours and 5 minutes, The Lost Kingdom skips over almost all of its world building and plot exposition in favor of action sequences with small character moments peppered in between. And Randall Park's character cleaning up all the loose ends by explaining everything that happened off screen, which is pretty often in this movie. But you know what? I still preferred it to Aquaman 1. The Lost Kingdom kind of reminded me of all those Jackie Chan movies back in the day where they'd team him up with someone from a different race and culture. Aquaman 2 is definitely in that wheelhouse. It's your classic opposites forced to work together story, where the odd couple must come to terms with their differences to achieve a common goal. And in the end, the characters learn to appreciate each other, having formed a unique bond. In this movie's case, brotherhood. I don't know, I might have just been in a good mood because I watched it on Christmas Eve with a good friend while getting hammered on lager at a movie tavern, but I had fun watching this. It's stupid, generic, and kind of pointless overall, but at least it managed to wrap up the characters' arcs from the last film for the handful of people that cared, and it wasn't a totally embarrassing way for the DCEU to go out. Is The Lost Kingdom's failure at the box office reflective of some kind of upcoming downfall for the entire superhero genre? We'll see. Deadpool 3 and Joker 2 are both upcoming sequels to superhero movies that I expect to be financially profitable. Or they could just be the last remnants of a tired audience's dying goodwill.
It's like The Sopranos. It's over.
A genre that seems to endure no matter what, though, is the biopic. And in November, we got Napoleon starring Joaquin Phoenix. This was not the movie I thought it would be, though. Napoleon and Josephine, on the other hand, would have been a more accurate title. This movie's not terrible or anything, it's just not all that great.
Okay.
The performances delivered by the principal cast are what saved the 2.5-hour experience from feeling like a total waste. And Joaquin might have been the worst part of it. He is a capable actor, maybe it's what he was going for, but his Napoleon comes across as enigmatic in this thing. You understand his obsessions with Josephine and France and how the two are intertwined in a way that ultimately defined his life, but as far as who Napoleon is as a person, I don't know, man. He's ambitious and charismatic, sometimes. Maybe that's the point, though. After all, the subject of the movie is Napoleon's three loves, War, France, and Josephine, and how they shaped who he was as a person more so than Napoleon himself. And the film does its best to give equal attention to all three, depicting his major military accomplishments, the key moments in his political career, and his romance with Josephine.
Hello.
But in juggling those three aspects of Napoleon's life while also attempting to tell a complete and coherent story, Ridley Scott seems to have dropped a few things along the way. Now, it's possible the director's cut fixes this problem, allowing for more time to flesh out these complex aspects that define one of history's most notable figures. Maybe. But if that's the case, that's the version you should have released in the first place. Because while the theatrical cut handles the romance between Napoleon and Josephine well, giving that story a complete arc with satisfying beats along the way, the most significant military battles in Napoleon's life feel rushed, and at times are completely inaccurate depictions of what actually happened. Much like the military aspects of this movie, though, the political movements that are depicted in it, the ones that fueled the rise of France's first emperor, while easy to understand and well-paced in the film's plot, are also woefully oversimplified. The ultimate crime there being that a lot of Napoleon's ensemble cast members don't end up getting the screen time they probably deserve. Ironically enough, this biopic, much like its titular character's career, was undone by broad scope and ambition. So yeah, Napoleon was kind of a disappointment.
Disappointing.
Speaking of disappointment, let's talk about the MCU. The Marvels, surprisingly, isn't the worst Marvel movie put out this year. Well, maybe it was financially, but it's better than I expected. That's not an endorsement. This movie is dumb. For one, it copies Spaceballs, a spoof movie. I mean, forget the insane nonsense that there aren't any inhabitable planets in the MCU's universe available for colonization for all of these lowly refugees. Literally vacuuming up a planet's air? Seriously? It's gotten to this point? This movie's writing is lazy. Like how Miss Marvel's family ends up on the Sabre space station. They all just go up pretty much because they ask. Why not at least have the dad get injured when they get attacked by the aliens at their house? Something so Fury's forced to take them with him. You know, maybe even add a little dramatic stakes to the story.
It would have to, it would be
Fuck it. More than anything, I actually think The Marvels is representative of what we might be able to expect from the MCU over the next few years. Bland, inoffensive stories that don't even have much of a political slant to them. The MCU seems to actually be responding to the negative criticism that they've received lately. No, I don't think they care about guys like me on the internet, but they do care about their wallets, and that's sure as shit where they felt it this year. Will it be enough for Marvel to self-sustain by going back to generic superhero movies that don't purposefully antagonize their fan base? Probably not, but it's possible.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
With enough of a soft reset, and by focusing the main storyline on legacy characters like the X-Men and Fantastic Four, they might be able to get back on track with moderate success. There's still some potential here. Iman Vellani is a great actress, and her character, Miss Marvel, could have actually had an interesting arc if they had been willing to explore the inner conflict of her image of Captain Marvel and who she finds out Captain Marvel actually is. Talk about just ignoring the most interesting premise in your movie. And that's pretty much the Marvel's problem in a nutshell. Missed opportunities. There's interesting moments in it, like Captain Marvel destroying the Supreme Intelligence and that whole flashback to how she got the nickname the Annihilator, but the overall movie, pretty bland. But hey, at least you got Beast. On the subject of beloved fur-covered characters, we've got to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, October's big hit. Now, I expected this movie might be a success based on it being a horror movie released around Halloween with an already established fan base, but I never imagined it would be this much of a success. Safe to say we'll be seeing another one of these movies every few years for the next decade or so, and I'm down for it. FNaF is a solid horror movie for little kids. It's baby's first scare, if you will.
You're a baby.
As far as the actual movie, it's kind of a mixed bag. The premise is cool, the plot is terrible. Look, man, I'm down for a freaked out story about the souls of dead children possessing animatronic, anthropomorphized animals that are hell-bent on murder, but how the fuck does falling asleep and dreaming about the memory of your younger brother's kidnapping solve it retroactively?
What are the rules? You know what I mean? Like, if we don't have a system in place.
The biggest problem Five Nights at Freddy has is that the protagonist's motivations are completely nonsensical. He wants to remember more about his younger brother getting kidnapped, so he decides to trade his younger sister for a few extra details about the day his brother disappeared. To what? Maybe find him again? In exchange for his sister? That doesn't support the way this character is portrayed in the movie at all. He beats up some random guy in the beginning of this movie because he thinks some kid is getting taken. To me, that sounds like a guy who would be desperate to hold on to the one part of his family that remains, the little sister. Oh, by the way, their parents are dead. No, instead he feels awkward around her because she's autistic or something.
That's brilliant. It's in the movie done.
They play it like he's not capable of taking care of her, but she seems like she's happy and they seem to be doing fine, besides him beating up random people. So I'm sorry, but that level of stupid really kills a horror movie for me. There has to be some kind of intellectual framework holding it all up.
What are the rules? You know what I mean? Like,
I'm fine with demon men that can kill you in your sleep or faceless maniacs that just won't die. All I'm asking for here is a few consistent rules to understand the stakes the characters are up against. Having said all that, Five Nights at Freddy's is apparently a very faithful adaptation of the games, so even though the protagonist and the overall plot of him searching for his long-lost brother in his dreams didn't work for me, it's nice to know that the fans of this series got a decent movie of the games they love. On the positive side of things, I like the design of Freddy and his crew and the lore behind them. They're oddly likable, and they're all pretty unique-looking characters. I do wish their personalities had been a little more clearly defined, though, to help further differentiate between them, especially when it came to their individual kill styles. Our only real standout from the crowd is the cupcake that somehow flies around, which was awesome. I just could have used more of that kind of thing. I'm looking forward to seeing where the FNaF series goes, though. It's one of the few movie franchises that looks like it might actually improve over time. And there's definitely a lot of potential for FNaF to unlock before they become completely played out by their own repetitive tropes, a fate that every horror series inevitably falls victim to.
It's not your fault.
August had 2 movies that I didn't get around to reviewing, and one of them was Strays. Like Five Nights at Freddy's, it's a movie that struggles to live up to its full potential because it doesn't lean into its ridiculous premise hard enough. Talk about screwing the pooch. Strays is the cherry on top of another atrocious year for comedy.
No one goes hard as fuck on comedies anymore. No one's making real comedies.
Strays plays on all those anthropomorphized animals on a road trip type movies that were really big in the 90s. Think Homeward Bound. It watches like a series of skits that were put together using Mad Libs, though, relying heavily on pee-pee, poo-poo, and boner jokes in an attempt to farm its laughter from the audience.
That's funny?
To me, it's funny. Yeah, do you have a sense of humor?
Strays was cute, and that's kind of the problem. It had more heart than I was expecting and was surprisingly touching, but I don't even know who to recommend this movie to. It's too raunchy for a family feel-good comedy, and it's too sappy for a laugh-out-loud adult comedy, but maybe your aunt who can't stop sharing political memes on Facebook would get a kick out of it. I mean, I thought based on the trailers we were going to get an over-the-top R-rated comedy, but like the disappointment that was Cocaine Bear earlier this year, Strays never takes full advantage of its zany concept. Between the two, though, Strays definitely has the better climax. I did get a few light chuckles from it, plus all the dog actors did a really good job in the movie. No, not the voice actors for the dogs, I mean the actual dogs. Nah, but seriously, the voice actors all did a solid job here too, especially Isla Fisher. And it was genuinely nice to hear Jamie Foxx's voice back on the big screen. So, at least there's that. Plus, Strays is sort of an original concept if you consider taking an original idea from people's childhood and putting an adult spin on it to be original. But hey, that's more than I can say for this next movie, Blue Beetle. I really wanted to like this movie, but I just didn't. Despite the fact that the Blue Beetle character is likable and played by a charismatic actor, this movie's just too much of an Iron Man ripoff, and the rest of the Reyes family might collectively be the most annoying characters I've ever seen in a superhero movie. From Rudy, Batman is a fascist Reyes, to the asshole sister that gets Jaime fired because she wants to take a dump, to his cringe grandma mowing down mercenaries with a machine gun. I couldn't wait for this family to be off screen.
Get the fuck out of here!
I mean, I don't know why they stopped at the dad. I would have killed off Blue Beetle's entire family, give him a heartbreakingly compelling backstory. Nah. But seriously, that family did not do it for me, which sucks because the plot pretty much revolves around them. Jaime comes home, his family's broke, he gets a job with his sister, is fired from the job when he stands up for Jenny Cord. Jaime is then given a stolen Blue Beetle after he goes to meet Jenny for a job interview, becomes the Blue Beetle after it chooses him. Jaime then teams up with Jenny, learns the legacy of the original Blue Beetle, Jenny's father, and fights a bunch of bad guys at the end alongside his whole family, finally taking on a villain that has the exact same power set as him, only with a bigger costume and a different color. It's simple, and simple can be good for a superhero movie.
I guess.
Simply put, Blue Beetle's derivative. We've literally seen this from Sony, Marvel, and DC 48 times since 2008's Iron Man, the movie that Blue Beetle so desperately wishes it was.
If I could just unzip myself and step out and be someone else, I want to be you.
The protagonist has to figure out his powers, there's a carbon copy bad guy at the end for the hero to take on, and some quirky side characters that help out along the way. None of it's particularly bad, it's just all been done before way too many times at this point. Again, the family stuff's the most unique angle this movie takes and probably the most compelling aspect of it, but it's also my least favorite stuff in the movie. Let's just hope that Blue Beetle is a reflection of DC's past cinematic missteps and not an omen of what's to come under gun.
Even if it's not the greatest movie, you got to make it better.
That does it for December through August, but the medley continues in part 2, July through May, which had some of 2023's biggest successes and most embarrassing failures. If you made it this far, I thank you for watching.